What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, or wherever you are, and whatever time it is. Welcome back to yet another video with you, man. Immersionholic, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another faction overview for the Divide Et Impera overhaul mod for Total War Rome 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we are revisiting Parthia, the glorious Parthia. That's right, we have done a faction overview for Parthia before, but since that last overview, the faction has received some pretty big changes and it's worth revisiting. So I'm going to cover the faction top to bottom, and I'm going to be doing this for all of the other factions that have been altered in significant ways. So expect a lot more faction overviews in the coming weeks and months. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you do enjoy this series. If you have specific faction requests, please comment them down below, and other video requests as well. Okay, everyone, so we are in the cultural group, the Arzabum. I'm sure I'm nailing that pronunciation, as I always do. Oh, speaking of pronunciation, we're going to be talking a lot about cavalry in this faction overview. Parthia is completely and utterly renowned for their cav. However, I know some people don't like the way that I pronounce cavalry. I'm not trying to say cavalry as in the C-A-L-V variant. I am trying to say cavalry, but keep in mind I am Australian, so my pronunciation is a little bit different to what the majority of you are used to hearing, and just in general, the way I talk is a little bit different and not very good compared to the majority of people who do YouTube. So I understand that it is cavalry, not calvary. Or however people are saying I say it. But anyway, all of the Arzabum factions, so this is the currently Parthia, Haik, aka Armenia, Atropakan, aka Media. Did I say currently instead of Media? No, currently Armenia and Media. Okay, never mind. And then Pontus. All of these factions share the following buffs. They get plus 50% ammunition for all missile units. In addition, they also get the Persian trade heritage, which is plus 10% wealth from all commerce buildings. Now this is a big, juicy benefit that you get, because it definitely wants to sway you towards having more commercial style buildings. And as Parthia, you are absolutely going to want to chase down the commerce chain. You can chase down pretty much any chain you like. I wouldn't recommend agriculture as Parthia, but you could if you really wanted to, but that's more so for later in the game when you take over Egypt and whatnot. But anyway, that's what we share with those factions. However, just for Parthia, we have the Cavalry Masters, where we have increased experience for cavalry that is recruited, so that's also very nice. You then have the multiculturalism buff, which decreases foreign culture public order penalties. This is big because you are part of the Pani culture, and being a part of the Pani, you're actually quite limited in what factions you're compatible with. So because you're going to be conquering Persians, nomads, you even have the Hindu Mauryaans coming in as well. Then you expand west, you go into Greece, Egypt. All of this is a lot of multiculturalism going on in this area of the world. So you need that public order back in line when there's more cultures involved. So keep this in mind as well. You definitely need to try to keep your foreign cultures happy as your campaign progresses. However, you then have Zoroastrian slavery aversion, which increases servile unrest, so you might want to be a little bit careful about taking slaves. Looting cities earns you slaves as well, enslaving armies after you defeat them. Be a bit careful with that, because it could get out of control a little bit faster than what you expect. But anyway, that's enough about the buffs and debuffs of Parthia. Let's jump on into the grand campaign and have a look at Parthia in the 1.3.1 patch for Divide Et Impera. Okay, everybody, welcome to the part 1 section of this video, where we check out the grand campaign situation for Parthia. Here we are at your one city. That's right, one city, and you know what that means. We got to scream it to the heavens. It means one hitter quitter. We got a one hitter quitter faction. That means if you lose your one city that you start with before you conquer anything else, boom boom, you're out of the game. It's GG's. That's what one hitter quitter means to those of you who are new to the series. Anyway, you have one city, one minor city that is not even a walled settlement. You then have one army led by your king Arsakes, here using his pretty epic mask and armor. You start off with a Parni bodyguard for him, then have a Dahe noble cavalry unit. We then have Dahe riders as well, and a single Parthian foot archer. All of these units we'll talk about in the military section of this video, in the part 2 section. But anyway, you start off with just the one city. Start off in the province of Parthia, and you start off with the warhorse resource being a part of your city. You do not need to build anything to actually gain access to it. It's already a part of your town settlement. If we go here, you can look where my mouse cursor is. It says plus. Well, no, it doesn't even say plus. It just says 5 warhorse. So just having a settlement building gives you the resource, which is nice because you have like no room to build anything at all initially. You're really just a bunch of nomads who have only just settled down up here in this region. You're looking to start branching out and conquering and getting something a little bit more permanent. So, what is the current situation? Well, as I said, you only have one military, you have no agents. You can go ahead and recruit a spy and a dignitary, 2 dignitaries in fact, straight away if you like. However, you need to research champions if you want any of those. You are a minor city in the province of Parthia, like I said, so you have 4 cities in total in your starting province, all of which are to the south of you, so you're up in the northern area of it. You have Suzia, Sadrakata, and then Hecatopolis. I deserve some credit for those pronunciations, I think, if I got it right. But anyway, this is your starting province down here. It's a very nice province, one of the best in the region, because it has 4 cities, but also because you have war horses up here, and then you have silk down here in Suzia. Very nice resource to have indeed. There is not much silk available on the map. In addition, you have some very nice cities neighboring you. For example, you could see as we come over here to the east, we have even more silk held by the Bactrians. They also have spices here in the city of Bactra, and then I believe that they have gold as well down here, if I remember correctly. The city of Marv has silver, and because it's silver, you can also get lead from there as well. So you're drowning in resources all around you straight away, which is a very nice problem to have. What else do we have? We have one military ally. We can start the campaign. This is the Daha. These are also Parni, so they're basically cousins of yours. They can be looked at as in that way. You're quite friendly with each other, but you don't actually have connecting territory. You can see right here there's a gap, so you're not even trading, but you have a military alliance, not just a defensive alliance. So you can get them involved in conflict if you like, but there's a small nomadic culture on the edge of Bactria. And Bactria is the juggernaut of your area, and they are going to romp and stomp your ally over here pretty quickly. They'll probably romp and stomp the Marv over here as well, or the city of Marv, I should say. Hareva is a faction. And so that's that. So let's go to your diplomacy and look a little bit deeper into it. Daha, like I said, friendly towards you. Hareva to your east. At the city of Marv, they're actually friendly with you, but they are also satrapies of the Seleucids. You are almost entirely surrounded by satrapies except for your northern side. Parthia to your south is also Parni, so you can join a confederation with them, technically. They also have iron available, another amazing resource. I mean, goodness gracious. The resources are so plentiful around here. But they are also a satrapy of the Seleucids. They start off neutral with you. You can try to buy non-aggression or trade with them, but they aren't going to stay very friendly for long, as is the case with the majority factions around you. However, you'll see the 2 people that really don't like you are the factions to your north. We have the Saka Rauka, just the Saka is how I usually refer to them, nomads to the north. And then you have the Verazim over here as well. Now these guys aren't necessarily the same culture as the Saka. The Saka are literally nomadic. The Verazim are part of your Parni culture, but despite that, for whatever reason, you have issues with each other. You hover over here, you can see some of the issues. Apparently we've broken treaties against them and had war and whatnot. So That's your diplomatic situation. You obviously also have the Seleucids just over here to your west. They control kind of roughly this sort of area of terrain, very large area, but they're at least a province or two away from you. And they're not really going to come out here all the way to the east. It's very rare that even when they do fight this satrapies that they will win, and even if they do win, by the time they get even out here, you're already pretty strong and able to conquer Parthia and other factions nearby before the Seleucids get too intense in the area. But anyway, that's that part as well. Let's look at your government situation. We have King Arsaces, 21 years old. He is married to a 23-year-old, so they should be getting some more kids coming soon. You do have a son by the name of Arsaces. Arsaces II right here. And then you apparently have a brother, Tiridates, who's 18 years old over here. Although, I'm not sure if that's his actual brother or if they just had to do that for technical reasons. But anyway, that's your family situation. We go to your political affiliation, though. You're a tribal confederation. I don't like this political government type, mainly because of the -10 loyalty for all political parties. It's rough. But you also get the public order penalties due to presence of foreign cultures, which is not good because you're surrounded by foreign cultures, as I said earlier. In addition, you also have the disdain faction leader trait, where you have another -10 loyalty for all political parties. So turn 1, you have -20 loyalty for all of your political parties, and -5 public order per turn in all provinces straight away. So that's rough. Two of the political factions are already in the negative with you, and this is just on normal difficulty. So Parthia absolutely is prone to having civil wars in it. If you play a full campaign as Parthia, I'll be quite surprised if you manage to avoid having a civil war. But anyway, that's that. Like I said, your family tree is pretty straightforward. Actually, one thing I forgot to add though is I recommend that you go to being a centralized kingdom within the first 10 or so turns. I usually do it within the first couple turns because it costs a lot of money. You have that money and you're not really going to spend your money on anything else for the first like 20 turns anyway. You're just going to be recruiting troops, which is pretty cheap. But also because it will cut into your party loyalty. So you get a -20 loyalty for all parties decaying by 2 per turn. So in 10 turns, you're going to lose this really bad debuff. So it is bad. You're going to get a lot of negativity from the other political parties. However, you do have the protected, I guess you could call it a buff, or a protected feature. So in Divide Et Impera, you get 20 turns before a civil war is allowed to happen. It's just to help you get the ball rolling, just to make sure that you can worry about other things without dealing with a civil war within the first 20 turns. So the faster you change your government, the easier it will be for you in the long term. It's up to you what government you want to choose, but I prefer the centralized kingdom. I just prefer the buffs in it. I can handle the empire maintenance and the upkeep costs, and it removes the public order issue and the -10 loyalty. Yes, it's nice to get the -10 upkeep for armies and then +1 experience rank for all units. That's nice, but I'm gonna still get benefits to my economy, which I'm gonna be relying on trade, at least in the mid to late game. So I'm gonna really want that. The experience rank, it's nice, but I mean there's other ways of getting that, and your cavalry gets an extra experience rank upon recruitment anyway. Which we can see as we go here, go to your recruitment, and like straight away we are getting 2 ranks because you have the tribal confederation, but once we remove that, you're still going to get the +1, which is nice. It increases your melee and attack and defense by 1 instantly, so you still do get a benefit. Just my personal advice on that particular part, as is all of this really, but that's my personal preference. It's up to you what government type you choose. But anyway, let's move forward. So you start off with only 1 city. You have a population of 35,000 people. So what does this mean for your population as the campaign goes on? Well, It's a little bit awkward because you're in a very populated part of the world. However, you are part of the Pani culture. You are not Persian. You are not nomadic. You're not Greek or anything else. You are Pani specifically. The Pani culture is not that widespread. You will notice that there's only a few factions with it. Parthia down here to your south. You got your ally over here. These bad boys. And then I believe Hareva isn't even Pani. Let's just double check. Nope, they're Persian. So that's that. That's all of the Pani cultures. It is not a lot. So your core starting province will have a lot of population for you if you can conquer it before other cultures get influenced there. And then taking these cities to your north should be okay. But even then, the Daha people are in a area where Persian culture is dominant, so not ideal. So once you start taking over these regions that don't have your culture, your population is going to go down, and you're just not going to have as many men or recruitable men at the ready. You will have a lot of cities as you get into the mid to late game, like this insane amount of cities just like out here and out here, which you'll be able to conquer relatively easily once you get past your early hiccups, which we'll talk about shortly. So you have that long kind of term potential for a really good population, but for your early game, it's going to be really, really hard. 35,000 people is a lot for a small settlement, but you're going to be going through them quite quickly, and all of your cavalry units use 120 men per unit, so you're really going to be pumping them out and using a lot of your men to fulfill the roles that you need fulfilled. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You've got a lot of long-term potential, but in the short term, you really got to be mindful that you don't want to drain your population too quickly. If you do that before you can conquer any solid territory, you're going to start suffering economically, and if you don't have an economy and you only have one city, you're going to struggle. You're going to be gone really quickly. So yeah, that is something to think about with your Pani culture, and it's going to be a game-long thing. It's nothing that you can really completely get around. One way to get around it, though, is that you can use, and you will need to use, mercenaries and AOR units. So as you conquer new territories, especially as you start to go west and you get more Greek cultures and like you go into Egypt and whatnot, you're going to want to use the local levy units to fulfill big roles in your armies, especially when it comes to infantry. Cavalry, you'll want to use your cav as much as you can. Infantry, though, you're going to be really struggling with your own infantry, and as you expand, you're going to be relying more and more on auxiliaries of different types to try and fulfill certain roles for you. But yeah, early on, it's kind of a way that you can categorize the entire Parthian campaign. Early on, it's very tough. It's one of the hardest starts in the game, in my opinion. But as you progress through the campaign, and you get to that late game stage where you finally own like all of Central Persia and Iran, and you're starting to get, well, you should already have these eastern provinces as well. If you get the east and you take over like Central Iran, you're gonna have an amazing economy, and then you'll start to steamroll as you go west, although you still always will have certain issues, which we'll talk about later. Which that kind of ties us into the next aspect, which is your economy. Your economy late game is going to be amazing. In the mid game, it's going to be decent depending what direction you go. For example, if you, for whatever reason, try to go like north, up around the Caspian Sea, it's not really a lot for you up there. If you try to go west, southwest, there is some decent resources and there's some good cities, but there's also a lot of fighting to be had out there. The best economical decision you can make, in my opinion, is taking these resource-rich provinces out here. Especially knocking out Bactria. Bactria has some amazing resources. Can we look at their diplomacy? Yes, we can. You can see that they have spices, they have gold, and they have silk on turn 1. The best like resources in the game, except for like maybe one of them. So marching east is going to be crucial to you, and you can't even get attacked from the east anyway, so it's fine. But yeah, your economy is going to be very, very strong, but it's going to take you a little while to get there. And you have another weakness, which is you don't have any ports. The closest port to you is going to be down here in the Persian Gulf. I mean, or you could go towards the Indian Ocean as well, but even then there isn't all that many trading partners as you come out here and begin to try and trade with the Arabs, or you try to trade with the Africans. It's not going to be as lucrative as what you would like. So really, doing serious levels of trade, it's only really going to start blowing up once you get over here into the Levant, Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, whatnot. Get cities along this coastline right here, and that's where you will be able to get some really nice trade flowing. Just one port city in the Mediterranean will get you amazing trading partners. You'll be able to trade with Rome, man. All of these really big Western factions that want all of your resources. So it's going to be a bit of a historical common sense thing where you think, okay, all of the empires that have established themselves in Iran or Persia, the Central East, whatever you want to call it, they all did. They were also successful economically because of the trade that flowed through their region from east to west, from China to the west, and west to east. So you need to think of that same sort of mentality if you want to have a really good economy. So your economics are going to definitely be commerce based. I would try and focus on building commercial buildings and anything that will boost those as well. Try to get a port in the Mediterranean as quickly as you can. Getting a trade port in the Indian Ocean or the Persian Gulf, sorry, it's going to be important too, because there is still some decent trade to be had going south, but you'll also be conquering as you go south. Whereas if you go west, as Parthia, you're not necessarily going to be looking to invade Greece or Rome, at least not for a very long time. So use them for trade in the meantime. So that's pretty much all of the aspects I want to talk about the Grand Campaign. Some general sort of advice for you though: play patiently. The Seleucid rebellion script is still very vital to Parthia surviving, so it's still not guaranteed that every single satrapy of the Seleucids will rebel, but a lot of the time the majority of them do. Sometimes none of them do. It is possible. It's kind of a bit more random now than what it used to be, but if you can get Parthava and Hereva and whatnot to rebel from the Seleucids, it allows you to declare war on these factions and take their territory without you having to deal with the big chunker, the Seleucids. So keep that in mind. Try to be patient. Wait around 30-40 turns before you start engaging them. My advice initially would be to do one of two things: either rush north and take out the nomadic factions, Saka and the Varazim, or rush east and take out Bactria as quickly as you can. Even if you need to give up the city of Nisa, do it. Take out these eastern cities. Set up Marikanda as your capital if you need to temporarily. That'd be an excellent capital for you. And then start to expand out slowly as if you're coming in from the east. Very nice city to do. But avoid fighting satrapies of the Seleucids early on. And try to pay attention as to when the Seleucids go to war with all of their satrapies. You'll be able to tell, and I think you'll even get a pop-up letting you know that it's happened. Even if you don't need to lose the city of Nisa, I would always recommend changing your capital. It's just a tiny little city. It's not going to be very good. It's always best to have a walled settlement for your capital. A port settlement would be ideal, although as Parthia, that's not really a smart decision for you. You don't really have any port settlements that are very good near you, so just try to be mindful of where you keep your capital anyway. You can change it. You do not have to stay in one single place. And then Bactria. Bactria hates you, even though it doesn't necessarily say it does in the diplomacy. Bactria will always come and declare war at you. It's the big, massive Greeks of the East. They are an incredibly tough faction to beat. They are probably the easiest faction in the game, in my opinion. And their units are so much better than yours in almost every single way, except one thing, which is cavalry. But now that I am done talking about the Grand Campaign, let's go ahead and examine your cavalry in the part 2 section of this video, where we'll talk about the military of Parthia. Alrighty everyone, here we are at the part 2 section of this video. Let's talk about the military of Parthia. Now before we get into the land troops, I will of course mention the navy. However, unfortunately, it is not worth the time to show you the navy, as it is one of the worst navies in the Grand Campaign. It is absolutely redonkulously terrible. They only have levy spearmen that man the melee ships, besides your general, which is an axe unit, admittedly. However, your general only gets a HP of 800 for your ship, which is really, really bad. And then all of the other units, actually no, only just the levy spear unit gets 600 HP for its ship, and then the other unit that you get access to, which is archers, only go to 550 as their maximum. So all in all, your navy is really terrible. You really want to avoid naval fights just in every single instance possible. When you do fight in the navy though, in naval fights you have to try and utilize ramming techniques. You really can't rely on boarding like you can if you're playing as Rome. But anyway, that's just covering your navy very quickly. Now though, let's get into the real reason that we're all here, which is to look at some amazing Parthian units. These guys have one of the best looking rosters out there right now in my opinion. They show a lot of progression and they are extremely multicultural. As you can see, as we look at this particular general unit, like look at the headdresses of these horses. Oh my goodness, that is just amazing. Very symbolic and really demonstrates the nomadic lifestyle, which is very fitting because everybody, this is, let's get rid of that. We'll keep this map up just so I can use the map markers. But this is your Pani bodyguards. This is the first bodyguard that you will get access to. These are basically just nomadic chieftains serving alongside your king. He will be up here. He might not have an eye patch, although this particular king does have an eye patch. Very interesting. Never seen that before, so that's pretty badass. But anyway, it's essentially a cataphract unit. It is not a melee unit at all. I mean, it's not like a melee cavalry unit, so you only have 4 defense, so charging, get them out as quickly as you can. However, this is a very unique thing because we actually have 3 bodyguard units on display for you. Usually I only choose 1, however, in Parthia's case, it is definitely worth mentioning all 3. So you start off with the Pani bodyguards, and then you're going to progress through these different levels as you go through different reforms. And so I'm actually going to take the time to mention the reforms right now. Parthia now has a new reform system, which is based on Imperium level and turn counter. So your first reform, called the Kingdom Reform, occurs at Imperium level 3. You must achieve that, and then you also have to wait until you get to turn 60. And that's where you're going to start getting the better mid-level kingdom style troops, where you're starting to see your armies become more centralized and better equipped. After that, we go to the Imperial reforms, which happen once you get to Imperium level 5 and turn 130. So that's super late in the campaign, especially just a standard DEI campaign. If you're using summons to slow down the campaign like how I do, then it might not be so dramatic, but it is a very late game reform. However, it is supposed to represent very late game Parthia. Parthia became a Persian empire over time, but initially it was an empire of nomads, or at least a kingdom of nomads. And so the kingdom period is where you're going to really see the real big change. I mean, just examining this particular unit, this is your Parthian noble cataphracts unit. 120 men strong, as is all of your cav units, because you're an eastern faction. You're obviously a cataphract unit here as well, although you can hold up in a prolonged melee engagement, or melee engagement if you want to pronounce it that way, because you have a melee defense of 10, which isn't horrendous, but it's not great considering the type of unit this is. It is a general unit, but I mean, you got very insane armor at 51, which is just redonkulous. Charge bonus 62, so an amazing charging unit, absolutely incredible. Not a horse archer though. Neither is his first. Oh no, this first one is, the second one isn't, sorry. It's just a little bit off-putting though, because it doesn't show the range, and you can't see like the range out like that, like how you can for these other units over here, how it goes in like a circle around it in a radius. That's the word I'm looking for. But anyway,
Royal Cataphracts!
Parthian Noble Cataphracts, and then we get to the absolute cream and butter of Parthia, Parthian Late Bodyguards. This specific unit may very well hold as being the single best Cataphract unit in Divide Et Impera. I can't say that for certain because I haven't gone through all the Cataphracts. There's a lot of them. A lot of different factions out there, over 45 or something like that factions, just in the Grand Campaign. But also, the nomadic factions are being overhauled, and they obviously rely heavily on Cav, and Cataphracts in particular as well. So I'm going to be looking into trying to figure out what is the best pound for pound Cataphract unit as time goes on. Hopefully in the coming weeks or so, but this may very well be the single best Cataphract unit. Just an insane charge bonus of 67, high weapon damage 20 plus 13 armor piercing damage, so just ridiculous damage. Attack of 12, defense of 12, bonus versus infantry, and armor of 56, base morale of 56 as well. And this is just base stats. This isn't even considering your general and whatever buffs he gets or whatever ranks and whatnot. This is absolutely phenomenal. I can't believe I pronounced that word right. Far out. That's a tricky word for me. But anyway, worth noting though, it is just a Cataphract unit. This is not a horse archer unit. Once again, you will see the difference in the visuals and the equipment. That's representing your standardization to become a little bit more of a quote-unquote proper military, a little bit more centralized, more focused on leading rather than riding around on horseback using a bow and arrow to cause damage, like these nomads are looking to do right here. But anyway, that is your 3 generals that you get access to. That's it, besides your navy. As you can see, we have quite a few different units to go through here, but I'm going to jump ahead to the infantry, and then we'll come back up to the cavalry after that. So let's start off with your spearmen. We don't have a lot to talk about here, so I figure let's get involved. This little category right here is just your spearmen.
Orders, my lord!
You start off with Pani spearmen, super low tier levy, 300 men strong, no javelin unit.
We are at your command.
We then graduate to a Parthian spearman unit. Basically the same thing, except the stats are slightly tweaked to be up a little bit, quite a few more. And the big change that you will notice is an armor of 20 for the Parthian spearmen, whereas the Party spearmen don't have armor. They have an armor of 1, so they're just wearing clothes. They're just showing up in whatever they woke up in. The Parthian spearmen, they're at least a little bit more prepared and a little bit more organized is a good way of putting it. So one bad thing though is that they do not have a shield wall or any sort of defensive tactic. However, as we get to the Imperial reforms and we get a little bit more serious, we have the Parthian Heavy Spearmen. A very nice unit. I absolutely love this unit. This unit and just having more infantry in general is what is making Parthia really tempting to play again. At least in the personal campaign, just because I love when Eastern factions have units like this. So this is demonstrating the use of heavy infantry, which the Eastern factions did use later on in their armies. It's nothing incredibly special. It's not super highly trained like Roman legionnaires are, right? So you're not going to have testudo or anything. They don't have even a shield wall formation, which might be a little bit lackluster, but they got very good equipment. So they have very high armor of 35, and they have a whopping melee defense of 20, which is insane. A shield value of 8, which is very, very nice. These guys will become your main front line towards the end of the game. Mid to late game, but more so late game stuff. Anyway, that's your spearmen. Let's jump onto your axemen over here. This little group that I just circled.
Melee infantry ready!
We again have the Pawnee warriors. These guys are basically your tribesmen wielding an axe. They do have a javelin and a shield, so not entirely useless. In fact, they're quite good, considering that they are the bottom tier of your levy units. Look at that jewelry. Oh my goodness. Jewelry has a brighter future than me. Anyway, let's move forward. Parthian axemen, 300 men strong. Again, they have a javelin. Just the stats is slightly better, primarily again in armor. So you're going to notice that trend where as you reform and you get deeper into becoming a proper established kingdom, not just a bunch of nomads anymore, that's where your units will become better equipped. So we're going to see better armor in particular. We're going to see slightly better morale and better defense because they have a better shield. So 300 men strong again. So very nice unit to have. Their stats aren't the highest though in terms of attack, but as they get experience and as your generals gain certain buffs, it will help. So they can become real killers, and you will need them to take on the Greeks and other armor-heavy factions.
For Parthia!
Parthian men-at-arms. These guys are the bad boys of Parthia. They get the job done. If you need to take a wall, they will take it for you, and they will do it honorably. And they will not run, almost. These guys saved me many a time in my own Parthian campaign. Absolutely fantastic unit. Their only real big drawback is that they're only 200 men strong compared to the 300 of the others, but their stats are better across the board in a lot of different ways. The biggest one again being armor. Armor 30 instead of just 20. That's quite big. So these guys are going to last for quite a while. I know I'm not giving you guys too many close-up visuals, but I do want to keep this video rolling. I don't like it being so long, but anyway, that's Parthian men-at-arms. That's it for your melee infantry. 3 spearmen, 3 axemen. Notice they're all axemen, you have no swords. At least no straight sword units, so we'll talk about that in a second, but there is like a combination of units that can use swords. So anyway,
We await your orders!
getting to your skirmishers now. We have eastern skirmishers. These guys just throw a javelin. Pretty useless all in all. I wouldn't get them unless you absolutely had no money and I mean really wanted a javelin, like if you're focusing heavily on elephants, but I mean get horse archers, get horse skirmishers instead.
Slingers!
Slingers, they're your only slinger unit that you get access to, at least as part of your core roster. Same sort of deal, I would not recruit them unless you just really wanted slingers, which as Parthia, slingers aren't really going to be your thing anyway unless you're trying to defend a walled settlement. So they're there, they exist, but we don't have all that much to talk about them. That's nice. So
Archers!
let's move on. We then move on to the Parthian foot archers. Is this the right one? No, it's not. Wait, yeah, it is. Okay, never mind. Just making sure. Yeah, we got Parthian foot archers here. These guys are your tribesmen archers. Very low armor and whatnot. Low stats across the board. Basically nothing special about them. But they do have 200 men in the unit, as opposed to the
Our orders!
175 that you see in regular archer units and your other 2 archers that you get access to. These are your Mardian archers. These guys are a little bit better skilled, so they have slightly better range at 175, which is actually quite good. Not too terrible, but they have a high armor piercing damage. So these bad boys will pull out their axes, I believe they have. I can't see it right now. Some of them show daggers instead, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to use that. Sometimes they'll pull an axe out of their butt. But anyway, these guys have very nice armor piercing damage and good weapon damage. Their attack is pretty bad at 7, defense is horrible at 3, but they can do some damage if you get them into like the rear of an armored unit. In addition to just being an archer, so that's nice. Good mid-tier archer for you.
Archers!
But then we come over here. Look at these bad boys. Try to get some nice close-ups of them. These are your elite Parthian archers. This is where you're starting to be like England in the medieval times with their longbowmen. These guys are very, very badass. Just incredible equipment. So armor 35 is just redonkulous for an archer. Puts them as at least a contender for being one of the best archers out there. Range of 185, almost as long as a slinger, which is just crazy because you can increase that range with experience. All of their other stats are great. Melee attack is only at 7, which isn't ideal, but like I said, experience will increase that. They do have the armor piercing damage of 13 again, so they're going to be pulling out some very nice melee weapons and doing some good damage. fantastic unit overall, and it has a nice shield on their back which does protect them. When you do see a shield on the back of a unit, that means that it will protect them. So that is very nice. Just fantastic unit overall. Definitely use this in your late game armies, and just that range, like look how far these archers go. Oh my goodness. But that's it for Parthia's infantry. Very limited. As you can see, your core roster really just relies on you giving yourself a baseline of troops, and you're going to need specialized AOR mercenary units to fulfill certain roles. For example, your spearmen are going to be a baseline for you when you do use infantry focused armies, which you shouldn't really, not for a long time, but when you do need to, spearmen will be the baseline, and then you'll have your axemen on the side to outflank. And then in the second line behind, you'll have some archers to deal some damage as well. That will be your basic super standard army for Parthia when you want to do Parthian infantry armies. However, you will need those mercs and AOR units to, send in a double axe unit around the side from the Morians, or try and hold off the enemy until you can send some elephants around, or get some, maybe get some Greek pikemen. They can take up like half of your main line on your right flank, as your left flank over here is just going to be spearmen trying to hold the line. So there's a lot of spice that needs to be added in. I know, ironic, but a lot of spice needs to be added into your army for your infantry to perform well. Otherwise, just them on their own, they're not really going to get a lot done. Even this really nice heavy spearman unit, it's going to be quite limited in what it can get done. It needs support, basically. However, speaking of getting things done, this is where we get to the Parthian cavalry. So we'll talk about your skirmishers first. So these are the cav units that just use a javelin when it comes to skirmishing.
For the king!
Dahe riders, super common unit to use, very entry level, low tier. Nothing really too special to say about them, except they're basically like chieftain, low tier cavalry.
Horse skirmishes!
You then also have Pani cavalry, which are in a similar sort of state, except they are faster, slightly better damage, slightly better range, slightly better everything. So, gosh, what a tongue twister that was. They do have 120 men, as does all of your cav, but at least these guys are better pretty much across the board. They just are lacking in armor. Unfortunately, the Dahe riders are better in melee, so if you're looking to do more recharges and whatnot, get these guys involved. Their attack and defense is better, actually. But just in terms of skirmishing, the Pani are better. So I wouldn't even say either unit is better in particular. They just have different roles. The Pani is better at skirmishing. Dahe riders can skirmish, but they're more ideal as a melee cav unit, really. But even then, their armor is only at 13, so they can do well against like low tier cav for a little while.
Skirmisher cavalry!
We then have this interesting unit here, this Hyrcanian cavalry. Not a lot of armor, just 23, but they're very skilled, and they have not javelins. Well, they do have javelins, but they have axes, is what I meant to say. So these guys can actually get quite a bit done. They do have a nice javelin to throw in, ammunition of 6 straight up, so they can get some solid damage in if you give them time. But with a little bit of boost to their attack and defense, they can actually be some real killers against enemy armored cavalry because they do have that axe. So just very nice looking cavalry. A lot of variety as well. I really love that Parthian roster, one of the best looking in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on because we're trying not to take it too much time today. Now we get to the, how do you say, crème de résistance, the cataphracts and the melee cavalry of Parthia. So yes, we looked at the general's bodyguard, which has the best cataphract unit, but now we're going to look at the melee specific cav units that Parthia gets.
Cataphract!
First off, we'll look at your first melee dedicated cav. This is purely just a melee cav unit. I mean, you can use it in the same way as the cataphract, but This is your one unit that can actually do well in a very long engagement, and it's kind of more bred for that. You don't have a super long spear like your cataphracts do, and you have actual good defense. So you have a melee attack of 9, defense of 11, which is decent for a cav. Charge bonus of just 48, so that's a little bit more inclined with medium to high level melee cav units. Armor of 49, which is very juicy. These guys would do quite well overall. Just very solid unit, quite heavy though, so it might take a little while to catch up to a unit. You don't want it chasing down enemy skirmisher cav unless you can corner them or something, or maybe use your Dahe men to chase it down. But yeah, the speed is only in the 6s. But then
Shock cavalry ready!
we get involved with your serious cataphracts. These are the Parthia nobles. This is one of your best early elite tier units that you get access to. Parthia nobles, Dahe riders, essentially. Not even as well armored as that last melee cav unit we looked at, but at the very least worth looking at. These are where your local nobles are going to be serving you. Charge... I mean, your lowest charge bonus we're starting off with for your cataphracts is 59. Like, oh my gosh, that's redonkulous. You will note, though, that they do have very good weapon damage. Weapon damage of 18 and armor piercing damage at 12. So, total of 30 weapon damage potentially to hit an enemy unit. Very, very nice. 120 men. And again, melee cav only, though. No skirmishing potential at all.
We await your orders!
We'll then jump up to the Parthian cataphracts. I'll try to get a close-up because the stats here, this is where they become a little bit unimportant because we just know it's getting better and better as we keep going on. These guys are, when you say Parthia, this is probably what you think, cataphracts. And these guys just look purely Parthian, very, very nice. I mean, I'm trying to look at their stats and think of something specific to say, but it's just all fantastic. Incredible. And we're hitting the 60s in charge bonus at a base level without any benefits.
Come on, cataphracts!
We then jump over to your Parthian camel cataphracts. Now these guys are interesting because obviously they're a camel unit. So, I mean, look at that armor, far out, poor camel. I can't imagine that would feel too good, but I mean, doesn't feel that good for horses, I ever imagine. But anyway, it looks a little bit different on a camel. Incredible melee attack of 15. Your last Parthian cataphracts only have 11, but their defense is only at 6. So these guys, while they can charge into anything and do some really nice damage, they don't want to be there for long. So get these guys out of the melee engagement as quick as you can. Keep cycle charging them. You obviously also have the scare ability, which is something everyone knows about. Camels, they scare the crap out of enemy horses. Not your own horses, just enemy horses. So that's very helpful. 120 camels in that unit. Absolutely phenomenal.
Cataphracts!
Parthian late cataphracts. These guys are your best cataphract unit outside of your general. And they have a charge bonus of 67. Let's just compare that real quick. So, stat-wise, they're almost the exact same as that general unit I told you about, except the morale of the general is up higher at 56 instead of 51. I believe that's the only difference. Armor is the exact same. Yeah. So this is basically the same as using your general. Besides the morale. And it's fitting though, it looks the same. Basically, it is the same unit, really. Just slight difference in morale, but anything can help at the end of the day. I have had these bad boys tip entire battles in my favor many a time. Incredible unit. Just unstoppable, really. And it even has a solid defense of 12, so if it does get stuck in a melee engagement, despite it being a cataphract unit, it will still chomp through whatever it is it's stuck in. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Lethal. Practical. The only downside really is that they are slow, with their speed just being around a 5, but I mean they're immune to heat and whatnot as well, so that helps. So anyway, that's it for your cataphracts. Some of the best cataphracts in DEI. I really need to narrow down what is the best, just because cataphracts are so fun to use anyway. But anyway, let's now move on to your horse archers. I know we've covered all this cav and we haven't even talked about horse archers yet. I know it sounds ridiculous, but anyway.
Armored horse archers!
Pani horse archers. You'll notice the Pani are again your basic low-level, just getting started sort of deal unit. Apparently you have a Scythian-looking general, or captain. Although again, the Pani represent the nomadic style of Parthia early on, so. Anyway, nothing too crazy to say about them, except they're very, very fast with a high speed of 8.
Horse archers!
You then have Scythian mercenary horse archers, which you'll get access to quite early on. That's why it's part of your custom battle roster, I would imagine. Interesting little factor, we're going to see some women getting involved in the fighting. Power to you, why not? She looks very grumpy, very pissed off. I would not want to be in front of her when she has a bow and arrow. But anyway, go get him, mate. Good on you. Always nice to see a little bit of difference there. We then come to the Parthian horse archers.
Missile cavalry!
The Roman legionnaire of Parthia right here. This is the unit that will make up the majority of all of your armies. Parthian horse archers. Horse archers can defeat any kind of army that comes in front of you if you have the skill and the micromanagement and the patience, most of all, to handle it. And these guys will get the job done. Their stats aren't even that amazing, but they're very, very fast and they have a good range, good missile damage. Hit the enemy as much as you can with your ammunition and then retreat and then do the same thing again. And within a couple battles you can wipe out the most elite Greek armies that you'll have to face. I highly recommend you check out my Parthian campaign. I uploaded it to YouTube because you will see me do that. It's a struggle campaign, but eventually I start to figure out, hey, I could use these guys just to take out some really elite units for very little cost to me. So it's not easy to do though. The micromanagement is really intense and it requires a lot of focus. But if you really want to do well as Parthia, you're going to be using these 3 units to make up the majority of your army for the first 100 turns or so, in my opinion. But then
Noble horse archers!
we jump up to some more elite horse archers. That's right, you have amazing low and mid tier horse archers, but now we get to elite, at least starting to get into the high tier and elites. This is your Dahe Noble Cav. Very nice. However, their range is only 150, which is actually a step back from the Parthian horse archers. So the Dahe, whenever you have Dahe in the title, it's probably not going to be as good as your Parthians, at least in some pretty major respects. But anyway, moving forward.
Summation Royal Lancers!
Summation Mercenary Armored Lancers. They are a horse archer unit though, despite it not listing it. Range of 160. This is where you're going to start seeing some really nice cataphract style horse archers with a melee attack of 13, but their defense is only at 5. Really, really bad. The Dahe Noble Cav are at least better for melee engagements, but yeah, your Sarmatian Lancers, do not let them stay in a long melee engagement. Moving on, we then have the late Parthian Nobles. These guys are starting to get very unique with their look. These nobles just came straight out of the feast, put on a helmet, got their lance, and they're ready to rock and roll. Very interesting armor and whatnot, and clothing that they're wearing over the top of their armor. Relatively close in terms of stats to the Sarmatians, except that the Sarmatians have less armor. Not as good of a charge, but the Sarmatians are better at attack. Although Parthians are better at defense, so kind of similar, but I would still consider it to be better. Range is only at 160 though, so I mean it's still solid for a horse archer, don't get me wrong. That's better than some foot archers.
Noble horse archers!
We then jump up to the Noble Horse Archer. Very, very different look to the last Parthian Horse Archer we just looked at. A lot more white going on in here. Man, I wish I could do these faction overviews slower just to show you guys more close-ups of the units, but really just giving a brief overview of each unit is taking up so much time, and I know me talking about taking up time is taking up time, but just wanted to let you guys know I am aware and whatnot. But anyway, Parthia Noble Horse Archers, they're just slightly better than the late Parthian Nobles in most respects, but not all of them. For example, they have a faster shots per minute rate. The armor of the late Parthian Nobles is higher. Actually, I would probably say that these should be probably swapped around, and the late Parthian Nobles should be slightly above the Parthian Noble Horse Archers. Just slightly. It's pretty negligible. They're very much the same type of unit. However,
Cavalry! Missiles ready!
we then get to a truly unique unit for Parthia. Parthian Cataphract Horse Archers. A missile damage of 18, which is unheard of for Horse Archers. Almost. There are some other factions that have Horse Archers like it, but it's just absolutely insane. Very, very incredible. Missile damage of 18. 6 of that is armor piercing, 12 is just hit point based damage stuff. Melee attack of 10, which is solid. Defense is only at 4 though, so again, this is a cataphract unit, not a melee cav. You don't want it to get stuck in a long fight. However, its range, 170 range for a heavy horse archer unit. That's just insane. 120 men, so it does have less men shooting than like an infantry unit would, but like it's still absolutely fantastic. And as you progress and get more experience, that range will increase. You'll get them up to 200. I mean, that's some next level stuff for a cav unit. A cavalry unit shooting that far away is just redonkulous. Excellent melee weapon damage though, so they do have those armor penetration weapons coming out. Armor of 49, so very nice armor as well. Just fantastic unit. Not the best unit you have, but the best horse archer unit you have, because it's the longest range. Yeah, you have other units that are close, but starting at a base 170, that's just fantastic. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for your Parthian core roster. We even do have a couple mercenary units thrown in there today, but you're going to be using those 2 mercenaries very, very often anyway. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for your Parthian army. Fantastic roster. It looks incredible. Now, if you've never done a Parthian campaign, I highly, highly recommend you jump in and do it. It's just a lot of fun, and it's in a very fun area in the east. But anyway, there's a couple of things you should note about that. Is one, you don't have much melee cavalry, so you don't want to be stuck in prolonged engagements for the majority of your cav. And you also do not have your own elephants. That's a big one that some people might not notice. You don't have elephants. In order to get them, you need to hire them as mercenaries or as area of recruitment units. So keep that in mind. You'll need to go towards Moria and buy some elephants off the Indians to get some serious elephant shock power. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this part 2 section. Let's jump into the part 3 section of this video, where we'll go over the verdict, final tips and information, and the overall difficulty rating of Parthia. Alright everyone, welcome to the part 3 section of this video, where we're talking about the verdict of Parthia. I'm going to make this very quick, as we have had a very long video yet again. But first off, there are 2 big positive sides to playing as Parthia. First off, your cavalry is amazing. I know I've said that a lot throughout this overview, but it cannot be overstated. It is not a miscalculation or anything like that. Your cav is some of the best in the world. And it shows in your roster. Use it to your best ability. And you also have excellent economic potential. You're in an area of the map that is quite unique in that there is a lot of amazing resources packed together very tightly, with the only drawback to your economy being that you don't have any ports nearby for quite a while. and even then you don't have access to the Mediterranean for quite a while as well. So try to remedy that when you can. Maybe consider sending an expedition to the south, sail up the Red Sea, take out Egypt if you can. Just don't use your navy to fight. But anyway, you have those two amazing points going for you. You're also in like the middle of the far eastern area of the map, so you're in a very nice strategic position as well. Once you do take over the area that you are living in, the Westerners, like the Greeks and the Romans and whatnot, they won't be able to march that far without you defeating them. Guaranteed. It's a very similar situation to Empire Total War when you're playing as Russia. Napoleon, yeah, his armies might beat the Russian armies, but he can't get to Moscow. That Russian winter is too brutal. Marching east out here to the middle of Iran, it's going to be very brutal for the Westerners to try and do, so good luck to them. By that time, you'll be able to use all of your wealth to hit them back and stop them anyway. So that's some big points to realize. Late game as Parthia, you're going to be in a very nice position. However, at any point throughout the campaign, your infantry is always going to be inferior to those who you're playing against. It's just a given, unfortunately. Despite the new update to Parthia and the new reforms that have come in and the new units that you now have from those reforms, they're still inferior to the majority of factions on the campaign, especially the Greeks and the Romans. They're going to give you a serious run for your money. You cannot build a conventional infantry-based army, expect to go up against, say, the Seleucids and win in a head-on collision. Not going to happen. The only way you will start doing well with infantry is if you rely heavily on locally levied units, aka AOR units, and mercenaries. I know it's a bit of a cliche and it's something that I've said a lot throughout this overview, but Parthia really does have to rely on its kingdom becoming multicultural and utilizing those multicultural units in its armies. If you don't do that, you're going to be stuck using just pure cav armies, which is okay, but taking those cities is going to be difficult without good infantry. Another big negative for Parthia: you're pretty disliked. You're going to be in a lot of wars. You're a very small faction early on, and as soon as you march your army away from your capital, you're going to get a lot of random declarations of war. It's quite common, even on normal difficulty, for the AI to try and take advantage of the player when they don't have an army in their core city, and their core city isn't well defended, so you don't have a good garrison, and you don't have a walled settlement. So defending your core city is really, really difficult early on. That's why I recommend you either try to... Well, you do rush, and you rush in one of two directions. You go north to the Verasm, or you go east to Bactria, and consider changing your capital location, because holding Nice is actually quite difficult, in my opinion. You need to get very lucky with the other nations to not declare war on you. You can pursue some diplomatic overtures, such as getting non-aggression from Bactria if you pay them, and Parthava, although you can't get non-aggression from Parthava because they're a satrapy. But you can get trade, so that might help. But anyway, you're going to be very disliked, and so a lot of people are going to fight you, and especially early on. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And the Seleucids have all of their satrapies, so you declare war on one, you declare war on all of them. That's another big potential ouchie that you might have to deal with. I know, big serious words here, guys. As I said, you have a big reliance on levying troops from conquered regions. In addition, you might want to consider, instead of always conquering regions you take over, try to use factions that you beat as buffers. So consider making them a client state or satrapy, whatever you want to call it, or maybe even liberating a faction and creating a military ally as a buffer. Especially in like the more barren areas like the Saba and whatnot in the Arabian Peninsula, you might want to consider, instead of trying to take over that very hostile territory, just using that land as a buffer, keeping quite accurately to the historical history of the time period. But I mean, the Parthians and other Persian style empires did that for a reason. It worked. It was very helpful, and that they didn't have to police these super barren and hostile regions. So consider doing that, because it might help you in the long run in terms of holding back the big Greek factions like Egypt and the Seleucids, or especially Egypt in the mid to late game when they have a lot of money rolling, because they'll be busy fighting these other smaller nations that can still finance a lot of troops that will be going hard at them. And as one of my last final points to mention is that it's because it's such a hard position, you will probably have to restart your campaign a few times before you can get the ball rolling. You need to get lucky on diplomacy in that you don't have to fight everyone at the same time, and you just need to do well with your battles, because when you're starting off your campaign, losing a single battle can easily mean the difference between losing the campaign or doing well in it, or even just surviving a few more turns. Like I said, a victory for you doesn't mean as much as it would for other factions. Usually, if you're playing a faction, for example Sparta, relatively hard Greek faction to play as, but if you win against, say, Athens and defeat their army, chances are you can go ahead and besiege your city and take it pretty quick. As Parthia, it's not so clear cut. You need to figure out how to deal with walled cities as well. Even the garrisons of towns are going to be hard to deal with unless you can draw them out or wither them down with your archers, which is going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience, and it's not easy to do. So because of all of these negative points that I've made, or at least all of these difficult points, Parthia is coming strong with a 8 out of 10. In my opinion, this is a very hard campaign to do. I believe I gave it an 8 out of 10 in my last faction overview, and while the new reforms have come in and Parthia has some new infantry units to play with, it's still going to be a very hard campaign, at the very least for the early to mid campaign. Once you get to the later stages, it's going to be a lot easier. However, you will always struggle with the infantry engagements, so that's something you're always going to deal with. So it's not like once you get to the late game you're set and you're perfect and it's going to be easy win. Horse archers are not good for auto-resolving, so you can't just send in your army to auto-resolve settlements one after the other. You're going to take serious casualties. So it's going to require a lot of manual battle fighting and a lot of very good generalship to use your horse archers to their full effect. And it's just not easy to do. Very hard to do, and it gets borderline tedious, to be blunt with you, which is a shame, but that's just that style of warfare. It is what it is, right? It's nothing wrong with the game or the mod. That's just how that style of fighting was. It was tedious to fight against as well. That's why the Romans had such trouble, cough cough Crassus, against Parthia, right? So anyway, 8 out of 10 in my opinion. Very hard campaign overall, but it's an amazing campaign, a lot of fun, and it will push you to your limits as a Rome 2 DEI player, in my opinion. There are very few factions that beat it in terms of difficulty and uniqueness. It is a very unique faction, and I really, really enjoy it. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys found this faction overview helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.